Today is July 7th, 2022, and it is time for a midsummer garden update. Let's start over here in the herb bed, which I call the herb bed, but it's really more than just herbs. There's a lot of stuff going on here. We have lavender, which hasn't yet started to bloom, but is growing quite well. We have a rhubarb plant. It's coming in decently. A very abundant rosemary plant that I'm probably going to have to start trimming more often. And two different oreganos. So here's one that I bought in a pot, and it's apparently a ground creeper. It's been spreading significantly. But then this is one that I started from seed that I thought had died, but it came back, and it grows much more upright. So I've got two different oreganos, which is probably more than I need. And then I managed to get 4 bottle gourd seeds to start and to take, and they are just taking off, and it's incredible. And one of the cool things I'm noticing about bottle gourds, unlike a lot of other cucurbits, one, the blossoms are white, not yellow like I see on cucumbers and a lot of other squash plants. Second thing, although we can't see it just yet, they blossom in the late evening, and then they're usually fading by the following morning, as opposed to most other cucurbits, which are blossoming open in the morning. And then the other thing to note too, which you can't really tell on video, but these leaves are very smooth, which most other squash leaves are very prickly. I can't touch them, they irritate my skin too much, but these are really nice. We can see too, it's definitely taking its way up the base of this sunflower. Speaking of, my sunflowers are coming in beautifully. I've got this one here that already has 2 blossoms opening up, another behind it that looks like the blossom is starting to come in, one down here that fell over and started to rewrite itself, and as we can see, plenty more heads as well that are going to come into play. In terms of other flowers, so the snapdragon that I had, it had gotten really tall. You can see right here where it snapped at one point and broke off when I tried to fix it. So I tried to replant it. It just wasn't quite enough. It didn't quite take. That was the original stalk. But the side shoots, which fell over, but they're coming in beautifully. This is Potomac Orange is the variety. The mix of Save the Bees flower mix that I put in the middle here has produced so many different things. There's basil, there's cilantro, I've got borage, which kind of fell over and is being eaten by the nasturtium. I've got a bunch of zinnia that came in, but I'm loving the colors, pinks and purples, and there's even an orange hiding out over here in the distance. So I'm getting lots of good zinnias. And then of course the 2 nasturtium that I got from Crabtree Farm are just coming in abundantly. This is Empress of India and Red Velvet. And then another smaller, shorter sunflower. I think it's the only one from the small sunflower pack that survived, but it's coming in well. Columbine is starting to come back. And then a bunch of strawberry plants in here, which I haven't gotten many berries. I don't know if I'm just not paying enough attention and I'm missing them, or if it's gotten too hot. They were producing later than I thought they would. Here's the really cool thing. These 2 right here, those are ones I started from seed. And this one over here right next to it, those are all ones I started from seed. And they are coming in beautifully. When I planted them, they like barely filled that little toilet paper tube that I've gotten there to help kind of mark it. But they are coming in beautifully. And the only other thing of note over here, all of my thyme, which was supposed to be right here, it died. I put it out too early. But I do have some carrots coming in, a few, and I've got more seed underneath that burlap that I just put in yesterday. So hopefully I'll be having some carrots soon as well. Oh, and almost missed it. That is horseradish right there, those big leaves, which is a brassica. So that is what I call the herb bed, although as you can see, it's like herb and flower, but it's really, really gorgeous to look at. While we're here, this is chocolate mint. It was a little thing that I put in here when I bought it from Crabtree a while back, and as mint does, it is spread. I am debating whether or not I want to leave it in the pot or plant it in the ground out front with other mint, but for now it stays in here. And then in the distance over there, spearmint also hanging from the edge of the porch, also doing very well. While we're on the north end of the yard, we'll just take a quick look at the berry bushes. I've got 2 blackberry and 2 blueberry bushes. The blueberries are the further back. They don't get enough sunlight here, which I finally realized, so I am going to move them over with the rest of the orchard, but I'm going to wait and do that early next spring. So they'll live here for now. They've produced a few blackberries. I haven't gotten any blueberries yet. It might still be a hair early, but it does look like I've got a few coming in. They're just not ripe yet. But I think they'll do better if I can move them. And then I put in a bunch of my extra tomato and decorative gourd plants along the fence here. As we can see, that is not very big. For comparison, there's my foot. Like, this is not very big at all. Again, not enough sunlight here, not the best soil. I didn't do anything to amend it. I just had a bunch of extra starts, and I said I'm going to throw them in and see what happens. The decorative gourd plants that you can see on the other side, they're still pretty stunted, so they're not doing so great here. Coming around the corner, they're coming in a little better. They do get more sunlight here. I don't know if you can really see that very well. There's one of them. There's another, and a third, and then right over there is a fourth. And one of them does have a tomato coming in, so it's doing something, but it was a trial run. I figured I would just see what happens. The answer is not much, so I need to find some more shade-loving stuff if I want to cover the fence for next time. I finally found something to do with this weird corner circle. I still don't understand why it was put here, because it is so shady here. I think this spot gets like maybe 1 hour of sunlight a day if it's not cloudy. It's really, really shady. But I realized the thing to put here would be leafy greens, so spinach and lettuce. I had some in, they were starting to come in, and then I went away for a few days, and apparently that was too long to not water them. And they all died. So I just restarted the seeds yesterday, but I'm hoping in a few more weeks I'll have some spinach and lettuce coming in here. Coming over to the west fence, this is where I had initially put in the raspberry vines, and they are coming in beautifully. And I also threw in a bunch of the extra tomato and decorative gourd plants that I had. They're doing much better here. They get a lot more sunlight. I think the soil is a little better. The tomato plants are almost as tall as the fence. Actually, in one case, it looks like it just crested the top of the fence. The raspberries have been doing well, and they're putting on lots of new cane growth, so I'm hoping next year I'll have even more berries. I've gotten a few handfuls so far. Some of the tomato plants are putting on fruit, although I'm also noticing that some of the tomato plants, like this one here, their leaves are just getting stripped bare, and I don't know what by. So I'm a little concerned about that. But if whatever is coming after it will come here and not into the beds, then I guess these will be my sacrificial plants. I've got a few more of those squash plants out front, and some of them are doing really well, actually. The ones here are doing okay. You know, this one's kind of spreading a bit. Hoping I'll get at least a few fruit off of it, and I can save the seeds and try working with them again next year. But there's a few tomato coming in. The raspberries, I think, are just about spent. But on the whole, they're doing pretty well over here. Now for the real excitement. Let's move in to the central beds here, which overall view right now, you can see things are just abundant and lush. So starting on the west bed here, on the west side of the west bed, I've got a mix of kale and broccoli. There's two different kinds of kale. There's a red Russian kale, which I'm noticing there's something that seems to really like the red Russian leaves, because a lot of them have holes in them. I haven't seen any pest that's going after it, but clearly something is. But the Vates blue, the curlied one, it's being left alone, at least for now. I hope that continues. I've also got potatoes that are coming in well, and I've been trying to hill them up. Often what happens is they fall over, and I just throw some more dirt over top. One of them is starting to blossom, so you can see kind of that really pretty purple blossom coming in. I've also, of course, got a mix of different nasturtium in all these different beds, some of which, like this one, is really small leaves, small plant. I don't really know why. Whereas right over here, look at that thing. All of the ones on this side, they're huge. And I had to like push them over the edge and get them to spill over because they were just taking up too much space. I did not realize nasturtium could get so big. The nice thing is, even though they can spread amazingly, they also are really easy to shape. So I find if I just kind of keep pushing it over, it moves the direction I want it to. And then I had a few zinnia that I was able to put in here. And what's fascinating is the zinnia, when they started out, they were so tiny, and it looked like they were barely going to survive. They seemed so fragile. And now look at them. I mean, this one here with the purple on top, like, it's enormous and so thick, and much bigger blossoms than the other one over there. I think this was the Northern Lights mix that I got. So a slightly different variety that produces, looks like bigger flower, bigger leaves, lots more branching going on. There's one that fell over that's producing a blossom here, and looks like it'll have more. This red one over here, kind of in betwixt with the lentils, Oh, and a basil plant that somehow ended up over here. The lentils, I don't think I've been paying enough attention to the lentils. Some of them are starting to kind of dry out. I've not been trellising them enough. You can see how they're starting to get to about that like 3-foot height, a little taller than expected. And I've got more here that I really should trellis. This should have been brought up before. I don't know. And then over here, oats and wheat. The wheat has all fallen over, but it's doing really well. And it looks like it's getting ready to be harvested. I mean, all of this is starting to turn brown and get dry. And I think that's the sign you look for to say it's about ready. So I may be able to harvest that in the next couple of weeks if I'm lucky. While we're here, though it's not part of an actual bed, I had a few extra cherry tomatoes that I threw in the ground next to the bed and put these tomato cages next to them. And they have been doing really well. One of them over here, I don't know if you can quite see it, but it's got a little zinnia friend coming up next to it and a squash that's kind of trying to climb up in here as well. But they're putting on beautiful, beautiful fruit. And this one, you can just see it here, is ripening up. In fact, I think, are these ready to come off? Yep, that one came off pretty easily. That one came off easily. This one too. So look at that. These are the first tomatoes. The absolute first tomatoes from the garden. These 3 yellow ones here. And I think I've got a couple in the south bed that may be about ready too. So we're going to try those later. Here is the south bed, which is pretty much entirely tomato and these beautiful nasturtiums coming up. I've got the yellows, I've got oranges. They're really coming in well. It was supposed to have quinoa as well. The quinoa is not doing well. I have one quinoa start that has survived out of all the dozens and dozens I've tried, and it's still very tiny. I don't know yet if I should put it out. Quinoa and lentils, having trouble with that. This plant right here that's kind of fallen over and it's kind of curling back up, that is my one quinoa that has survived. And it's been sitting like this for weeks. Next to it, I've got Brussels sprouts that I recently started, and a few more marigolds that I wasn't able to put out. I put some marigolds out and they're doing okay, but I think they're in kind of shady spots. But you can see lots of tomatoes starting to come in, and I think over here, yep, you can like just see it back in here. They're not quite ready. Those are starting to ripen up. I'd say another day or two and they will be ready. They're very close. And I've got these kind of organized. The 2 right here are cherry tomatoes. These, I believe these were a mix of the yellows that I had, so either the Sartre-Loys or the Lemon Blush. These 2 on the edge here are the purples, so either Purple Rain or Cherokee Purple. And then these 2 here were supposed to be the red ones. The ones I planted in this bed died, so I just put something else in and I made a note, but I forget what. But in the other bed, they should be, one of them is Abe Lincoln and one of them is a beefsteak. Okay, so here's the north bed, and from the other side, because of how crazy it is in there, but this is kind of a mirror of the south bed. It's mostly tomato, has some nasturtium kind of flowing along the side, a different variety. This is the cherry red nasturtium. See, they're a nice light red color. In the middle of this, though, you can see some basil, which I probably need to like open up some space and give it a little more sunlight, but I've got basil interspersed all throughout. I've still got a few onions that I haven't harvested, but most of the onions have come out of there. I've got a few that I'm leaving intentionally because they are flowering, and I'm going to try to save seed off of that. So that one I think is close to ready. That one I probably should put a bag around so I can make sure I don't lose any of the seed. And then I've also got in the middle here 3 pepper plants. So this is a Thai Dragon, which is going to be a spicy one. You can see the peppers are thin and they're starting to really come in well. And then in the middle there, I believe that's the Tawny Port. Those peppers should be a dark purple. And then on the east end of the north bed, right here, one more pepper plant, some of which are really coming in beautifully. This is an Aura, and so when they fully ripen, they will be orange. I've got a lot starting to come in here, so that one's going to give me a lot of peppers. Oh, and then a couple of amethyst basil as well. And then the other 2 beds, the central bed and the east bed, this is where I put in the 3 sisters, and wow, is it a mess. And in fact, you can see the squash like taking over the area around it. I'm doing my best to try to guide it in other directions. Oh, this poor tomato plant. Got pulled over by the rain and by the squash. I'll fix that in a minute. You can see squash all through here. It's a little bit of a wreck. I'm going to do this very differently next year. I put everything in at once, and that was not the best way to go. Also, the squash and the beans kind of took over the corn. The corn was struggling. It's finally broken its way through. There's tasseling going on the peaches and cream. Yeah, this is one of the popcorns, so the popcorn's starting to tassel too. Which, who knows if that means I'm going to get some crossbreeding going on or not. I guess it is what it is. Some pest has gotten a hold of the beans, and so you can see a lot of the leaves are really just getting eaten apart, and I've tried to get rid of the bugs that are on here, but not successfully. But I have gotten some good beans. So like, here's one that's really big. I am intentionally letting them get big. I know that if you want to have them as green beans, you're supposed to harvest them much more tender than this, but I don't really want them as green beans. I want the dried beans. You can also see, here's one of the squash coming in. I'm not sure what kind it is because it's so chaotic I won't know until they get ripe. Oh wait, here's one up here. I think that's going to be a table queen, so a acorn squash. Here's another one hiding out under there. I think that's going to be a spaghetti squash. And then more out here, or maybe it's a pumpkin, because I think it's the same vine. And that looks like a pie pumpkin coming in. I've only found one summer squash in here, hiding out right there. I'm waiting on it to get a little bit bigger, although I did plant a few of those. But there's others kind of all through here, hiding in different places, doing my best to keep up. So yeah, you can see like the mix of the corn and the bean and the squash. Here's a bunch more beans hanging here, really, you know, getting ready to be harvested for the dry stuff. But I'm letting them really dry out well. But a lot of them are dying. Next year I'm going to organize this very, very differently. And then of course the orchard, which in another month or two it'll probably be time to prune, but I think it's still a little early. But the apple trees are both my height, or actually this one is a couple inches taller than me now. The peach tree has come in well. The cherry tree is doing nicely. One of the pears has finally started to get moving. This pear, you know, it's kind of struggling a bit. And my figs are coming along. I didn't prune them, which is probably why they're not growing as fast, but that's okay. I can wait until next year. And the pomegranate, same thing, didn't prune it, but it's kind of hanging in there. And then a few more like random tomato plants floating around. So it is a lot to keep up with. It also feels like it's not nearly enough for what I really want, but that's okay. This is a learning year. I've got a lot coming in. I am contemplating putting in 4 new beds. Winter activity if I'm going to do it. Anyway, that is the garden tour for summer of 2022.